China is angrier with Israel than a college freshman that gets all their news from TikTok. If Iran falls, what comes next for China? Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell, and I'm back. I had found an old Blockbuster rental I'd never return, and believe me, it's hard to find a store that's still open. So as you might already know, last week, Israel bombed the absolute crap out of Iran. And you know who's most upset about this? Other than Iran, of course.
China!
China has condemned what it calls Israel's violation of Iran's sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity, saying that it opposes any action that escalates tensions and expands conflict. After all, escalating tensions is China's job. Stay in your lane, Israel.
We strongly condemn Israelis' attack on Iran. This is a violation of the Iran's sovereignty and territorial integrity. And we are particularly concerned that they are attacking nuclear facilities, which is another red line that Israel has crossed.
Of course, this rings a bit hollow, since China condemning a violation of territorial integrity is like Skeletor condemning speaking without having lips. China also stressed that Iran has the legitimate right to the peaceful use of nuclear energy, and that strikes on peaceful nuclear installations are unacceptable. Because when I think Iran, I think peaceful, the same way I think non-violent when I think of those chimps that eat people face first. But China is a gracious authoritarian. It's willing to play a constructive role in helping to de-escalate the situation. China even called both Iran and Israel, because if any country can mediate and promote peace, it's China. I'm joking, of course, and I seriously hope former Democratic VP candidate Tim Walz was joking as well when he floated China as a neutral actor with the moral authority to negotiate Middle East peace. China has about as much moral authority as Skeletor has lips. I've been watching a lot of He-Man lately. Seriously, how does he enunciate? The issue, of course, is that China is far from a neutral arbiter. In fact, China has lots of reasons to stick up for Iran. One big reason is their pure heart and not wanting to see anyone get hurt. And of course, by that I mean oil. Back in 2021, China and Iran signed a $400 billion comprehensive strategic partnership involving massive Belt and Road Initiative investments in exchange for oil at a discount. Although given the Belt and Road's history, that may have wound up doing more structural damage than Israeli bombings. Both sides of that deal were really about oil for China. China needs energy to fuel its manufacturing as well as its military. And so China has been getting all the illicit Iranian oil it can get through quote-unquote Chinese teapot refineries, despite US sanctions. But the primary BRI project was a China-Iran game-changer railway between Urumqi and Tehran, which is reportedly already up and running. This allows China to circumvent US sanctions in order to get the oil it so badly needs from Iran. In fact, China is by far Iran's biggest oil customer, because China has about as many scruples as Skeletor has lips. Seriously, just try saying something without your lips. It ain't happening. According to Reuters, Chinese independent refineries accounted for 77% of Iran 2024 exports. So it isn't exactly good for China when Israel hits energy facilities in Iran, since, fun fact, oil and gas are kind of flammable, I think. This could be a reason for China to want peace between Iran and Israel, except that the war also serves a purpose for China. All the resources the US spends on defending Israel and protecting maritime trade routes is resources spent that could otherwise go into helping Taiwan's defense, which is why China has historically allowed its weapons to get into the hands of Iranian proxies, like Hamas and the Houthis. You'd think as a Democrat, Tim Walz wouldn't be a fan of China, since they're all about giving weapons to dangerous people that shouldn't have them without any background checks. But I don't want you to get the idea that China is supporting Iran indirectly, because China also supports Iran's military directly by providing materials for Iran's ballistic missiles and drone components. And guess what? It turns out the US has indirectly been helping China directly help Iran. It's The somehow also my taxpayer dollars meme. The House Select Committee on the CCP found last year that U.S. investors were pumping money into 6 Chinese companies that supported Iran's military and terrorist proxies. The FBI, meanwhile, put out bounties for Chinese agents who smuggled U.S. electronic components to companies affiliated with Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, starting as early as 2007. That's before the 2008 economic collapse. I guess smuggling is a career that's recession-proof. So how could they have been allowed to get away with that for so long? Sometimes I wonder what the world would be like if China wasn't going around supporting authoritarians like Iran. But as much as China and Iran seem to be all buddy-buddy, just like in the South China Sea, things aren't all smooth sailing. Sure, they conduct joint military drills, and they're both members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS. But at best, they have a strategic partnership. They're not formal allies. Kind of like a work friend you're friendly enough with, but would never want to hang out with after 4:59 p.m. Iran has plenty of things to complain about. Aside from cheap Chinese crap flooding the Iranian market, China loves keeping options open by having ties with even Iran's rivals like Saudi Arabia and the UAE. And with Israel too. China, as usual, also falls short of keeping its promises. Despite China promising billions in investments in 2021, 3 years later, Iran had only seen a fraction come its way, which is shocking. That China even gave them a fraction of what they promised. That's an improvement. Nonetheless, Iran and China are still more friends than enemies, which apparently gives Chinese netizens the right to judge Iran mercilessly. According to Think China, the Israel-Iran conflict is stirring up patriotism among Chinese netizens, with some mocking Iran as a paper tiger and the most timid country in the world. They say Iran got to where it is today because it caved to the US, and that it wasn't anti-American enough, and that China must never repeat that same mistake. After all, China would never do anything as pro-American as ordering the assassination of a president. But it definitely benefits the CCP for people to think this way. In fact, Chinese media is already using Israel's attack on Iran to promote propaganda about China's military strength and US aggression. Well, promote more propaganda. For example, this Chinese article insinuates that Iran should have gotten Chinese weapons instead of Russian ones, even though a bunch of those Russian weapons are at least partially Chinese. But why let reality get in the way of a good narrative? This article says, if Iran had trusted China and obtained weapons from China, surely it would have beaten Israel to a pulp, or even kept Israel from attacking in the first place. It also argues that to deter Israel, Iran should have acted more like North Korea, which keeps rehearsing and is ready to fight at any time, with its habit of directly executing suspected traitors by shooting or artillery, leading to internal unity. Yep, that's all Iran was missing. Well, that and a cool music video. North Korean propaganda is on another level. Meanwhile, English-speaking pro-CCP shills are also bragging about China's military capabilities, saying that rich countries do air force, poor countries do missiles, and China does both. They're also warning that the lesson for China should be clear. After attacking Russia and Iran, the US empire will come after China. Yes, because the US is the one that started the Russia-Ukraine war and the Iran-Israel war. Totally. The conclusion pro-CCP shills want people to have: China is completely justified to prepare itself for war with the US. It's the US that's causing chaos all over the world, ruining Russia, Syria, Iran, and China if the CCP's not careful, which is ridiculous. The US would never engage in tactics and attempted regime change. Shelley, I think the CIA hacked our teleprompter again? And not to what about it, but of course, when China causes chaos, such as by building up its nuclear stockpile, collaborating with organized crime, and attacking neighbors, well, it's everybody else's fault for not being peaceful enough. Iran isn't the only thing being bombed, so is China Uncensored by YouTube. 1917 Alberto wrote, "Wow, this is crazy. I thought the whole YouTube suppressing this channel was just paranoid. When I tried to look for your channel today, the automatic search bar would not show me the channel like it normally does. Yeah, things are tough, but you can help. First, by leaving a comment with the honeypot emoji as part of Operation Honeypot to show YouTube's algorithm that we have great engagement. And then, by subscribing to our premium website, where we don't have to worry about YouTube censorship, and you also get a bunch of exclusive content you won't ever see here on YouTube. That's ChinaUncensored.tv. You can just click this button that's been on the screen. And if you want to see a fun side project I'm working on, check out this video I did about Hogwarts Legacy and why people are still arguing about Harry Potter being woke. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.